Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha television. You're watching the Breakfast News with me, Frank Pereira. Here are the latest headlines. Cyclone Hoodhood death toll up to 24 with large parts of Andhra Pradesh and Odisha battered. Prime Minister to visit devastated areas today. Chhattisgarh and MP brace for heavy rains. Shashi Tharoor removed as Congress party spokesperson. The Thiruvananthapuram MP says that he accepts the decision but should have been heard first. WHO warns of Ebola threatening state failure in West Africa. US admits it needs to overhaul management of the virus after a second case was detected there. And Hong Kong police begin a second day of removing barricades put up by pro-democracy protesters occupying the streets of the Chinese-controlled city. Our top focus on the bulletin, Cyclone Hoodhood is moving inland, having tempered into a deep depression. Heavy rains have hit Jharkhand and Bihar. More rains are likely in Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh today, even threatening to create a flood-like situation. This as cyclone hit areas of Odisha and Andhra struggle to pick up the pieces amid massive rescue and relief efforts. 24 people have been declared killed. Here's a detailed report.
A day after braving Cyclone Hoodhood, Visakhapatnam residents were up against a severe shortage of food and fuel on Monday.
Due to this cyclone, there is not having any petrol, diesel and food. There is having a lot of food crisis.
The number of trees have been uprooted, mangled, as well as electric pole and telephone poles have been fallen. So we are restoring the road communication. That is our number one priority. Then we are focusing on the utility buildings.
The storm left in its wake fallen trees, damaged homes and broken communication links in the city. 7 people were killed. Many passengers were still waiting at railway stations for train services to resume on Monday morning.
परसों रात को 1:30 बजे से यहीं पे हैं। ये प्राकृतिक जो दुर्योग है इसके लिए चक्कर में मतलब फंस गए हैं हम लोग आके यहाँ।
In neighbouring Odisha, people were relieved that the cyclone lost much of its intensity by the time it hit the state.
जिस तरह का माहौल था वो तो टल गया, अभी फिलहाल सही सलामत सब ठीक है।
The cyclone weakened into a deep depression and has moved on to Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. Jharkhand witnessed heavy rains.
Today morning also it has further weakened into deep depression and less entered about 90 km northwest of Jagdalpur and 190 km south of Raipur. The system will move northwestwards, weaken into depression in subsequent 3 to 6 hours.
In the massive evacuation operation, more than 150,000 people were shifted. The effort was comparable to the exercise undertaken during cyclone felling last year that caused 53 deaths. Fishermen were cautioned not to venture out into the sea on Monday. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, the Congress yesterday, that is on Monday, removed MP Shashi Tharoor as the party's spokesperson. The step came just days after Tharoor praised Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his Clean India initiative, a remark that didn't go down too well with the Kerala Congress. Even though Tharoor accepted the decision as a loyal worker of the Congress party, he claimed that he didn't get a chance to put his view across. The BJP saw this as a chance to attack the Congress, suggesting that the step reflects intolerance in the party.
As an individual, I may have an opinion on many things, but as a spokesperson, I should reflect the opinion of the party. So that may be the reason why he was excluded from the list of spokespersons.
Have they removed him because of his non-partisan support for Swachh Bharat movement or Clean India movement, which is in national interest? So they do not like any of their party members or members of parliament to work in the interest of the country and would prefer that they only subscribe to the high command's likes and dislikes?
कांग्रेस शायद ये भूल गई है कि राजनीति में हम लोगों ने एक सख्त परंपरा डाली है कि अगर कोई सरकार अच्छा काम कर रहे है तो उसको हमें बुरा नहीं कहना चाहिए और जो गलत कर रहे हैं उसको गलत कहना चाहिए। विपक्ष का काम सरकार को आईना दिखाना है।
Well, on a day when the loudspeakers fell silent in Maharashtra and Haryana, after weeks of intense campaigning, the Indo-Pak border also witnessed an uneasy calm. But decibel levels peaked in the blame game over who violated the ceasefire first. Here's a report.
Pakistani guns remained quiet along the 192-kilometer-long international border on Monday. But the government once again asked Indian forces to be on alert and retaliate strongly to provocations.
Government will appropriately respond as and when the situation demands.
In Jammu and Karachi, political parties led protests against the cross-border shelling. Both sides blamed rival nations for targeting civilians in their attacks.
Unfortunately, the people who die on the borders, whether it's a Sipahi from our side or that side, he's a poor man, or the people who live on the borders.
Indian security experts and political leaders also criticized Pakistan for escalating the border tensions in order to internationalize the Kashmir issue.
भारत ने कभी भी अपने इतिहास में किसी दुनिया के दूसरे देश पर कब्जा करने की अथवा आक्रमण करने की कोशिश नहीं की। हम वही अपना चरित्र बनाकर रखना चाहते हैं। लेकिन अब चलाई गोली उन लोगों ने या हमारे लोगों ने उसका जवाब दिया, तो पाकिस्तान संयुक्त राष्ट्र संघ में जाकर कह रहा है बचाओ बचाओ बचाओ। हालात ऐसे पैदा हो।
Pakistan has been trying to internationalize the issue time and again in the UN recently, Nawaz Sharif's speech, and now by this letter. It seems they don't know the lessons of history. It seems they don't learn the lessons of history, and it shows a desperation in Pakistan about the fact that the country is disintegrating.
From the figures that they have given in their letter to UN Secretary General, if there are zero casualties amongst Pakistani soldiers, then obviously they are the aggressors.
On Sunday, Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's political advisor Sartaj Aziz wrote to the United Nations Chief Ban Ki-moon accusing India of deliberately violating the ceasefire agreement. He also appealed to the UN to intervene and resolve the Kashmir issue. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Moving on now, President Pranab Mukherjee, who is on a 5-day visit to Norway and Finland, will oversee signing of a dozen bilateral agreements with Oslo today. He reaffirmed India's long-standing friendly ties with the Nordic countries. President Mukherjee received a ceremonial reception at the Royal Palace in Oslo on Monday morning. He later held talks with King Harald V and the top Norwegian political leadership. He also visited the Norwegian Parliament and City Hall. India is looking to gain a strategic toehold in the Arctic region, which is fast emerging as a new arena for geopolitical jostling after getting permanent observer status in May 2013 in the Arctic Council of the US, Canada and 8 Nordic countries. Well, we'll slip into a short break now, but on the other side, retail consumer inflation falls for the second month in a row. The RBI is confident of better to come. That and much more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. Well, consumer retail inflation declined for a second straight month in September, dropping below 7% on Monday. The figures of 6.4% is the lowest since January 2012. In August, retail prices rose 7.73% year on year. The core inflation has also slowed to 5.9% from 6.9% in August. Still, the RBI is widely expected to keep interest rates on hold until the April-June quarter. Its concern is that risks linked to subnormal monsoon rains and growing geopolitical tensions could drive up prices. The RBI had sent a strong signal last month that it could hold off cutting interest rates until it was confident that consumer inflation could be reduced to a target of 6% by January 2016. Joining me on the show this morning on the Breakfast News is senior journalist Priya Anand who will talk to us about, consumer inflation and what exactly it means as far as the consumer is concerned. Priya Anand, as far as inflation is concerned, we've seen it's at at an all-time low as far as the last 2 years are concerned. What do you think has really prompted this?
Well, there have been several positive factors, including the steps that RBI has been taking. And like your report mentioned, RBI has vowed to break the back of inflation. So clearly, Mr. Raghuram Rajan is doing whatever it takes to keep inflationary expectations low. He's targeted January 16 consumer price index at inflation at 6%. And he's keeping a very close, tight watch on monetary policy and on interest rates.
Now, talking about interest rates, of course, everyone is speculating that interest rates are not going to come down in spite of inflation being controlled. Do you see that changing, or do you see it continuing this way?
Well, so far as interest rates are concerned, I think RBI has made it very clear that unless it's very confident that inflation actually will be down to its targeted level that it is targeting, it's not going to relax the interest rates in a hurry. That being so, but the positive thing is that you've had food inflation, which has come down in September. Now that is, of course, whether it will sustain given the monsoon worries we've had, that and other factors. That is a clear.
And what are some of these other factors that you're talking about?
You see, the other factors is one positive thing that has happened internationally, for instance, is
crude oil.
You've had the crude oil prices, which have been down 20% this year. The winter is approaching, and there is a clear uncertainty about whether the declining trend in crude oil prices will hold. Hopefully it will. And the other thing, of course, is there is a statistical impact which we see in the September inflation. Whether that statistical impact will sustain is again a question, because as you get into the winter months, you've had, the September, you've had very high inflation last year. So consequently, this time the consumer price index inflation that we see at 6.5% or around that is partly because of that statistical effect of the last September being very high inflation. Now, in the subsequent months, the inflation rates was on the downward swing. So in the subsequent months now, one has to watch that trend very clearly.
Indeed. We'll have to watch the trend very clearly. But one of the promises, Priya Ranjan, made by the new government or the Modi government was, he's going to control inflation. Thus far, it has happened. Is it because of the steps that were taken, or is it because of some other, influences?
Well, the government has played its part to the extent that it's keeping, to the targeted level of government borrowing. As we know, if the government borrowing goes haywire, then it has an inflationary impact. So to the extent that the government is trying to stick to the target on borrowing, it is helping the Reserve Bank of India, supplement that with its monetary policy. So that is having a positive impact on inflation. But as we know, inflation is, insofar as we can be very confident and that the lower inflation will sustain only when you have an increase in production. So that's a factor of growth. Now, normally it is, people believe that there is a trade-off between growth and inflation. But there is no such trade-off. In fact, they sort of help each other. You cannot have a very high inflation and that high inflation is not going to help growth.
Yes.
And invariably, you would see that if you have high growth, you would be in a better position to keep control on prices. So the clear challenge is how to increase production. That's not just farm production or agricultural food production, but production of other articles. Unfortunately, production is not picking up the way everybody would like it to pick up. So the broad question then would come to investment in the economy going forward, and to what extent growth picks up.
Talking about investments and growth, of course, we've seen several countries showing interest in India as far as investing in India is concerned, but it's not been to optimum level. Do you think that that needs to change going forward as well?
There has been a positive sentimental change insofar as investment climate is concerned. Now, these, of course, have to materialize on the ground and for its impact to be felt, and investment in creating new production capacity. That's going to take time. It's not something that will happen overnight. Now, the key question here is, as we know, several of those pending projects, which were pending for months, those projects have been cleared. To the extent that those projects their implementation is expedited on the ground. The quicker it is done, the positive impact of that can be felt.
Indeed, of course. Thank you so much, Priya Anand, for putting things into perspective for us as far as inflation is concerned and sharing your views on the program. Moving on now, India has committed $4 million for reconstruction of Gaza. India is participating in the conference on the reconstruction of Gaza that is underway in Cairo. The Joint Secretary from the External Affairs Ministry, who is representing India, pledged $4 million in response to the National Early Recovery and Reconstruction Plan for Gaza presented by the Palestinian Authority. India has stressed that a comprehensive dialogue remains the best guarantee of a durable peace for effectively addressing the issues confronting the region and its people. Moving on now, the crisis in Hong Kong has taken a violent turn. Pro-democracy protesters clashed with the police after the police forcibly dismantled some of the barricades erected by pro-democracy activists. More barricades blocking street movement have been removed this morning. Some violent scuffles have broken out and tensions mount. Here's a detailed report.
It had to happen sooner or later. Protesters and police clashing in the third week of Occupy Hong Kong. The protesters accused the police of using force to remove barricades that they had set up. Some protesters were even forcibly taken away. Soon, things got out of hand with some of the protesters chanting slogans and pushing the police to the back of the road.
We want to set it apart here, but the police come and start fighting. Yeah, and still right now. Yeah, just totally.
The Hong Kong police say they decided to remove the barricades after it became a hindrance to workers, especially government employees who had to go past them to get to work.
The protesters have enough space to make their voices already. Continued occupation of the roads creates nuisance and is completely unreasonable. Police have to remove these obstacles so that traffic can at least partially resume.
Across in the mainland, the Chinese Foreign Ministry defended the Hong Kong police's decision to forcibly remove the barriers.
我们的立场是，占中行动完全是非法活动，我们支持特区政府依法来予以处理。
These protesters have been camped out for 3 weeks straight now. The protests have been largely peaceful, but that could soon change in the next few days. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, the World Health Organization has warned that Ebola threatens the very survival of societies and could lead to failed states in West Africa. With a third suspected case of Ebola in the US has vowed to reform management of infections. President Barack Obama is said to be supervising measures himself. Here's a report.
Doctors in Texas are keeping a close watch on the second Ebola patient in the country, a health worker who contracted the virus while taking care of the first victim. The patient's identity has not been revealed. Doctors are monitoring her temperature and have placed her in isolation.
I live right next door to the person who contracted Ebola. And yeah, I mean, I'm freaked out, but I guess I'm not super scared.
Medics in Massachusetts are also keeping a close watch on a third man, although there is no confirmation that he's infected.
We are evaluating other potential healthcare worker exposures because if this individual was exposed, which they were, it is possible that other individuals were exposed.
Meanwhile, the condition of the Spanish nurse who contracted Ebola after treating 2 infected priests is stable. As the epidemic spreads in West Africa, Liberian health officials are appealing to nurses and medical assistants not to go ahead with a national strike. The National Health Workers Association is demanding an increase in the monthly risk fee paid to those treating Ebola patients. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
A new Amnesty International report says that Shia militias in Iraq have kidnapped and killed scores of Sunni civilians in recent months. The document accuses Shiite militants in Iraq of committing war crimes against Sunni civilians in apparent revenge for attacks by the Islamic State. Amnesty said that the militias have been supported and armed by the Iraqi government. The accusations came 2 days after IS confirmed that they have captured and enslaved women and children from the Yazidi community. Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi has admitted to previous excesses by security forces, but he has not yet commented directly on allegations in the Amnesty report. Earlier, Abadi also said that Iraq faces an existential battle against militants from the Islamic State. Let's now bring you up to date with the other news from around the world in our World Wrap. An assembly of Catholic bishops convened by Pope Francis at the Vatican have called on the Church to adopt a more positive stance on homosexuality. In a preliminary report, the Vatican Synod said homosexuals had gifts and qualities to offer. Conservative groups have rejected the report, calling it a betrayal, while some gay rights groups have hailed it as a breakthrough. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has made his first public appearance after more than 6 weeks. The state media reported that the leader appeared at a newly built scientist residential district with photographs showing the leader using a walking stick. It was Kim's first public appearance since the 3rd of September, ending speculation about his health and even talk of a possible coup. Yemen's president has appointed the country's UN envoy Khalid Baha as the new prime minister of the country. The move has been welcomed by the Houthi rebels who had rejected the nomination of previous Prime Minister designate Ahmed Awad bin Mubarak and threatened to stage mass protests. Baha will have 30 days to form a government after rival political groups gave their backing to his selection. The Catalan regional government in Spain has called off plans to push ahead with the contested independence referendum planned for November 9th. The referendum was suspended last month by Spain's constitutional court, but the Catalans' leaders had vowed to hold it. A spokesperson for the Catalans said that the leaders will look for other alternatives to consult the public. Let's now take a look at how the global stock markets are doing. The US stock market ended Monday's volatile session sharply lower as selling intensified at the last hour due to fears of a global slowdown growth. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 223 points or 1.3% to end the day at 16,321. Standard & Poor's 500 index closed down by 31.39 points or 1.6% to close the business at 1,874. The Nasdaq Composite dropped 62.58 points or 1.5% to finish at 4,213. Asian stocks stumbled to 7-month lows on Monday as promising trade numbers out of China failed to cheer the market. Japan's Nikkei, meantime, lost 0.16% or 78.30 points to end the trading at 15,300. Hong Kong's Hang Seng was down by 0.06% or 20.02 points to close the day at 25,140. Gold prices rose by 215 rupees or 0.45% to 27,293 per 10 gram as speculators created fresh positions after the precious metal advanced to 4-week highs in the global market. Silver plunged by 830 rupees or 0.34% to finish at 39,000 per kilogram due to heavy speculative unwinding with subdued industrial offtakes. Let's now bring you up to date with all the sports news from around the world. Here's our latest sports beat. Northeast United kicked off their Indian Super League campaign with a 1-0 victory over Kerala Blasters on Monday. The match in Guwahati, the second in the inaugural ISL League, was settled by a goal from Koke on the stroke of half-time. The Spanish striker firing a first-time shot into the bottom corner of the net to give Ricky Herbert's victory in the hard-fought encounter. Olympic bronze medalist MC Mary Kom has been chosen as the most valuable player of India's Incheon Asian Games campaign at a felicitation of the medal winners on Monday. The title was confirmed after a poll. Mary Kom is the first Indian woman boxer to win a gold medal in the Asian Games when she clinched the yellow medal in the Incheon Games in flyweight class. Holland's World Cup hangover lingers on and they remain off the pace in their attempt to qualify for the Euro 2016 after a 2-0 defeat in Iceland. 2 goals from Gylfi Sigurdsson secured victory for Iceland, who have 9 points from 3 in Group A and sit alongside the Czech Republic with their 100% record. Milivoje Novakovic's first half double gave Slovenia a 2-0 European Championship qualifying win in Lithuania. The Shimizu striker scored twice in 5 minutes to decide a match in which his side were deserving winners. The result leaves the two teams level on 6 points in second place in the Group E, 3 points behind leaders England. Serena Williams continued to dominate the WTA rankings despite being sidelined with an injury to her left knee. The 33-year-old American was forced to abandon her defense of the China Open earlier this week due to the injury, with second-ranking Maria Sharapova going on to win the tournament. And finally, Times Magazine has released its annual list of most influential teenagers. US President Barack Obama's daughters, Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai and Grammy-winning New Zealand singer Lorde feature right on top. I'm going to leave you with this. Have a good day.